So, hello, I'm Anna Amelia and I'm from Northeast Animal Rights, and today I'm delighted to welcome along Claire Palmer, who is the founder of Animal Justice Project. So thank you very much and welcome, Claire, to this interview.
Thank you for interviewing me.
So first of all, the question which I ask everyone, could you tell us about your vegan journey, please?
Yeah, so I've been vegan for a long time, since about 2001, actually, which I think is probably about 20 years or so.
Old school.
Yeah, so basically I first started sort of thinking about, I mean, I've always been an animal person. I've always been an animal lover. I remember sort of going on holiday with my parents when I was very, very young, and I used to get upset about other kids like being cruel to, insects and crabs and stuff on the beach. And I've just always been sort of very into animals. But I think it was going to school, and there was animals in the school, in the biology department. There was actually rats and mice. Remember, there was a spiny mouse, and there was some rats as well, and they're kept in the sort of typical tiny plastic cages. And I used to go at lunchtime and kind of and let them out onto the I was called the animal monitor. So while the other kids were sort of outside doing normal things, I was inside letting the rats out, run around to try and sort of get them a bit out of their cages. And I took them home in the summer and gave them more freedom and basically took them back to the school. And I remember my mum saying to me, "Oh, just pretend that you've lost them," type thing. Don't take them back. And I did take them back, and they were then killed and dissected. And I remember just being absolutely heartbroken. So I don't know whether it was something to do with that. I also had a friend at school who's vegetarian, so she was telling me stuff. And basically the first time that I got involved in activism was going into central London to the big anti-vivisection marches. Yeah. When there was 25,000 people. I don't know if you sort of go back to that era, but I was doing a lot of anti-vivisection campaigning. So I was involved in the Shack campaign, which was the campaign to close Huntingdon Life Sciences. Then I started hunt sabbing at 18 years old. And actually at that point, I was still just vegetarian, not vegan. And I remember one Boxing Day going to a hunt protest in Kent or Surrey, and standing there with my placards, and the SABs turned up in their sort of black, Land Rover with blacked out windows, all jumped out, sort of all, balaclavas and what have you, not balaclavas, but yeah. And I remember thinking, oh God, this looks really, why am I standing here with a placard? And I remember going over to them saying, "Can I jump in? Can I come sabbing with you?" And they let me. And that was the first day I went sabbing, and then I was going sabbing for years, every weekend. But I was still wearing leather boots at the beginning. And then it was basically meeting the hunt sabs that turned me vegan. Yeah. It went from anti-vivisection marches to hunt sabbing. And it's just been non-stop activism ever since then, really. So it's very much I'm not a new vegan. This is something that, and also I very much started on the path of veganism through animal rights, not health or environment.
Yeah, I think that's an important final point actually you made. I mean, as I've said to people, that it doesn't matter how you access veganism, as long as you stay vegan for the animals. It should always come back to the animals. Otherwise, absolutely. It's just plant-based. You're not a true vegan. And I was talking to Ronnie Lee the other day about the veganism definition, about how the updated version, which he was involved with a couple of his colleagues, in terms of adding the obligation in to advocate for animals, because I think that really is what we should be doing. Veganism is it's not just about the food, it's about everything. It's about the whole, all of these things that you've just mentioned there.
And that's why, we Animal Justice Project work on pressure campaigns as well as consumer awareness, because the reality is we're just not going to change we're not going to change enough consumers to make a difference to the meat industry. So that's why we tend to strike a balance between pressurising the industry as well as educating consumers. Both are equally as important, but they're not going to work on their own.
Yeah. So for those of us who don't know much about Animal Justice Project, could you tell us how it started and how you got in? Obviously you've created it, but how it differs from other animal rights groups? I mean, you kind of mentioned there about the fact that it's a pressure group as well.
Yeah, so we started it in 2014 in December. That was when we got our company status. And we were, as some of you might know, we were actually focusing 100% on vivisection. So we were working, we were getting a lot of media, we were focusing on universities, uncovering what they were doing and basically doing demos, media and raising awareness. Over the years, we've changed. We now pretty much focus almost 100% on animals in farms. We do that probably because it's easier, so we can carry out undercover investigations. It's easier to get funding, the reality is, than campaign against vivisection. I generally find it an easier issue, and you can make more impact working on farmed animals than you can on vivisection. So we've kind of changed from, we still offer anti-vivisection leaflets, and I think that's where we see sort of the vivisection work being most effective, is supporting people on the ground within their local towns. To be a centralised group campaigning against vivisection, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of staff. It's a hell of a difficult issue to work on. Whereas we find that with animal farming, we're actually making quite an impact. So it started as an anti-vivisection group in 2014. And since then I now have 6 staff, all are part-time. So we're working very hard at fundraising. We're just growing and growing. So
yeah, you say part-time, but it's going to be a full-time job for all of you, because it's one of those ones where you live and breathe it, isn't it? It's not like a...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nobody in the team, we're all activists, and I think that's what does make us different to, I think one of part of your question was what makes us different, and actually we are different because we are very animal rights focused. We're all activists. We've come from activist backgrounds, so we don't come from a corporate background, and of course we always work. I mean, we work pretty much 24/7. The entire team does. So yeah.
And we mentioned just before we came on air as well that you're based in Bristol, and and we do have a lot of other obviously Viva is based there as well, and we have Josephine from the Animal Safe Movement UK is based there. So in theory there should be a lot of activism going on in that area in Bristol. Yeah, there should be. I think I think activism obviously has slowed in a lot of places due to COVID, and I think it's good to see things sort of sparking up again now. But I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? And also the other thing as well is a lot of the work we do is online. So we make most impact, especially if we're going to be doing pressure campaigns. A lot of the work we do is actually on the computer rather than kind of going out on the high streets. So with so many different issues and situations in animal rights, how do you decide which one are you going to take on as an investigation or a particular event?
I mean, we choose investigations and we choose campaigns within areas that aren't really worked on by other groups, and we do that deliberately. So, for example, with the killing of the bull calves, the male calves in the dairy industry, that hadn't really been focused on since about 2011, when they were still shooting calves on farm, which they don't do anymore. So no one had actually filmed within slaughterhouses the killing of those calves. Same with the duck investigations that we've done, aggressive foods. Again, it's a very neglected industry. So we tend to choose campaigns that we think we're going to obviously get some success with, and also just aren't really tackled by other groups, because we don't want to be stepping on the toes of other groups when they're already way more funded than we are, and have way more resources to be able to tackle issues. So we tend to focus on areas that we just think that aren't really tackled elsewhere. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of the main driver of when we start campaigns.
We used actually some of your leaflets. We did the Dairy Still Kills a couple of weeks ago, and then we found out your leaflets. I'm going to be putting an order in for some more, because they went down really, really well. And the group really liked them as well, because they're colourful and bright and sort of obviously educational, but they get the facts across as well.
We have an amazing designer who, I mean, all of our stuff looks so professional. Our materials, our outreach materials, because we have just an incredible designer on board. And obviously, we have a great team writing materials as well. So
So do you have any events or any projects which you're especially proud of?
I mean, I'm particularly into the calf issue. I feel like the transportation, the trade of calves, even the export of calves, although that is supposed to be banned soon, at least from England, is certainly an issue that just hasn't really been, we obviously uncovered the dealer, Derek Whittle, Oaklands, and that just hasn't been covered before. So I feel like getting the sort of UK first is something that I am proud of. Because it's showing people things that just they don't expect. And the other thing that I'm proud of as well is that we don't obviously we have a very animal animal rights stance. So we deliberately also go to higher welfare facilities, whereas so we tend to not go for like the mass broiler chicken investigations and campaigns, like, for example, animal quality in open cages, because it feeds into this whole thing of like, you know, go high welfare, then go cage free, and it's better. So we that's another thing that I'm proud of as well, that we do tend to go for definitely the more difficult campaigns and difficult investigations, like our bath soft cheese organic dairy we've just exposed. That wasn't the easiest dairy farm to go for. We could have just gone for a bog standard intensive dairy farm where probably you would see a lot more abuse, for example, but we didn't want that, didn't fit in with our ethos of really trying to expose the best of the best. So we certainly choose our battles, not because they're easy, but because they're going to be impactful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because we often have this conversation when we're out in the stalls about welfare and animal rights. Obviously, we're called North East Animal Rights, and that kind of like, a lot of people think that's quite an extreme name, but actually we explain the difference between the two and how welfare still results in the death of the animal and the animal who wants to live. So it's very important that we draw that distinction and make sure that people are aware it's not about higher welfare, looking after the animals until they die, because we often we have, when we did the dairy still kills, we had some dairy farmers come up to us and show us pictures of their cows in lovely fields and tell us how looked after these animals were. And we were able to say it's not about the welfare, it's about the fact that these animals don't want to die, and you're breeding animals, you're raising them, and then you're killing them.
Absolutely, they're taking their babies as well, and that was one thing we really wanted to try and get on this high welfare farm, was the fact that, you know, in the dairy industry the babies are just taken away, it doesn't matter what label they're given, and we wanted to show the separation, that the distress that is felt by both mother and baby, and that's just something that's just not been done with by the groups. We really try and focus on standards, perceived standard practices that take place on these farms, and that helps with you guys as well, because if we're gonna, because showing abuse is great. You know, the animal quality investigation was fantastic in showing that terrible abuse on farm, but you're just going to get, it's a one-off farm. And that's what happens.
We do. That's exactly what we get. It's just one bad apple. It doesn't happen in our farm. It doesn't happen with this farm. It's only, and then they'll say that's the minority. We are the majority. So it is really important that you do stuff like that. So the recent event at Darlington, which obviously we were a tiny small part of it, was a major success because you had so much coverage all over the place, and you had so much awareness being raised as well. Now, we know that obviously some activists were arrested and they were expected to be arrested. So how important do you think these events like these are, where activists have to be prepared to risk their liberty and possibly injury as well? We know one of our friends and colleagues was injured. We know she's fitting well now, but obviously she was injured on the day. So how important do you think these events are, where they're kind of, going beyond the law, the current law anyway?
I mean, I think they're really important. I mean, it's something that we've actually been wanting to do that event for about 2 years. We think it's very important, the sort of work that even Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rebellion are carrying out, and that we've done at Darlington, because I think you need to try different techniques. And I think, we could have stood out there just with the placards, but it wouldn't have got the media. And I think it's about sort of not being afraid to try different things. And I think non-violent direct action has been shown to work. It gets the media, it gets people thinking about it. So my short answer is yes, I do actually think it's very important to have those kind of events, and I'm really excited and really happy that you enjoyed the event, and it actually turned out very well, I thought.
Yeah, it did. It went really well. We were all really, really nervous driving up because we didn't know what to expect. Particularly us being dressed in black as well, because black is not a colour we use, and we were kind of thinking, no, it's going to. We literally didn't know what to expect, but it was really, really well organised, very well. It was just a very, I would say, smooth in terms of what you obviously expected to get out of it. And watching your interview afterwards as well, was on the news, was really, really good, because obviously the farmers seem to be taken by surprise. And I know we have to have these conversations with farmers who, that's part of what we do. We're having these conversations with them to try and pull them away from animal farming. But there's always going to be that element of farming, of the farming industry, like those who attended this event, who kind of like see us as extremists and see us as, so we have to shine, have to highlight this.
I mean, I think it's taking quite a hardline position. I mean, we wanted to do that event. We wanted to just strip all the welfare stuff out, bring it right back to the fact that farming violates animal rights. So, when you think about it, that is, oh my God, that's quite an extreme position. But of course, it's a logical position. It's like, we're actually not saying anything extreme whatsoever. But to them, it's like, and I think it's really important to just make people think about the basics. And I guess that's what we try and do really as Animal Justice Project. We really try and bring it back to those individuals, what they're feeling, what it does, what basic farming actually means to animals. And that is the horror. You don't need to be showing all the abuse in a way. Just farming in its essence is horrible for animals.
I think what we took away from that event was, obviously there was a different layers of activism going on all the time. And when we were we had farmers who were coming up, sort of like driving through and literally just going berserk at us. But they were saying that we were the extremists. We were standing there, peacefully. The most probably extreme action, if you like, was the fact that obviously there was a vocal protest at the gates, and but they were gesticulating to us. They were asking the kids to join in, and this is them sort of like. It just doesn't sort of like sit right with me when you've got children who are taken along to these events and ingrained in this sort of barbarity. Absolutely. And it's all normalized. It's normalized behavior, and this is what normalized.
Exactly. I mean, I think it was I think it went very well, and we're looking forward to doing more events like that.
Well, we will be there.
We need you there for sure.
So how important, I mean, I know obviously you've got a background, you've got a master's in zoology, so how important do you think your background and your qualifications are in adding weight to discussions with policymakers you have and those who can bring about change?
I mean, to be honest, if you'd have asked me a few years ago, I would have probably said that it makes more difference. But actually now I'm not really sure. I mean, Animal Justice Project holds its own. I mean, it doesn't need me with my master's degree to give us any more clouts. I think the organisation speaks for itself. But I think a few years ago when we were just starting out, I think, yes, it certainly makes a difference. But also it helps me in my work as well. So we do a lot of research into the farming industry, and we really go down to the tiny detail when we are, for example, preparing to launch an investigation. We look at, we speak to vets and we speak to ethologists, and we look at the behaviour of animals. So it's quite nice that I'm able to teach my staff as well how to properly research things, and we try to make sure that everything we put out is 100% accurate as well. And that's actually something else that I do pride us on, and we try to keep everything very professional. Have that hardline stance, but keeping it professional. I think that's what makes Animal Justice Project quite different.
Yeah, I think, I mean, one of the farmers that we've spoken to said that basically all the stuff that we had in our leaflets, I think it was a Viva leaflet she was looking at the time, was all rubbish, it was all nonsense. So I asked her to go through it line by line to tell me actually what was nonsense. And literally the first line she couldn't disprove. So it's kind of...
One thing that we've really worked hard at is to sort of expel the myth now that calves are still shot on farm. And that was the reason we went into that slaughterhouse, and we wanted to film the bull calves being slaughtered, because we want to try and keep ahead of the industry. And the industry was saying, no, we're not shooting calves on farm still, because supermarkets basically have clamped down and said, you're not allowed to kill these male calves on farm anymore. You can't shoot them in the head. And there was still a lot of activists who thought that was still happening. So it's really important. So I see it as our job to really try and educate activists as well, because we've got the time, we can sit here and research and what have you. This is our jobs. So we wanted to show that, no, this isn't happening. That doesn't mean it's okay. And the calves are actually being reared for whatever, and they're going off to a happy life. We wanted to show them being reared for beef, which we did at Berryfields. We wanted to show them in the slaughterhouse. We wanted to show them in the dealers, which we've done. So I think we've done a pretty good job of showing the fate of these calves, and people just think, oh, they're not being shot anymore. And that is what the industry is putting out. So
just to rewind a little bit there, when we, so just for viewers who aren't aware of this, we know that one of the biggest controversies in the dairy farming is because when calves are born, if the female calves, obviously they're taken away from mothers pretty quickly, and they put into the dairy part of the industry. If the male calves, they were shot. So can you tell me, I know obviously the law changed in 2021, was it, where they weren't allowed to do that? I haven't seen any stats in terms, because I've checked on government websites in terms of the stats you would expect them to be drastically reduced next to zero. But could you tell us and the viewers what the changes have been since then?
Yeah, I mean, there's not actually been any legislation banning the shooting of calves on farm. So it's not legislation, it's more the retailers saying to their milk suppliers, you're not allowed to do this anymore. And also Red Tractor as well, Muller, although that's dragging its feet a little bit, Arla, they're all banning it. So it's basically a thing of the past. There's no point talking about shooting calves on farms.
Yeah.
So what happens instead is they go to the traders, they then go to the slaughterhouse, some are reared for beef. Sorry, the stats, so there were 65,000 calves actually going through to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to show is, yes, they're not being shot, but they are going to the dealer, they're being slapped around, kicked off trailer ramps, and they're ending in the slaughterhouse. This is the reality of dairy. It's not got any better. The thing is, the male calves will never really be much use to the dairy industry. They are trying to use sex semen. They're trying to produce cows that are more suitable for rearing, but you're always going to get calves that aren't suitable for beef. So I think we need to keep saying that, no, this isn't happening. They're not being reared for beef. They're not going on to this lovely life. They're still being killed. They're still being killed either way, whether a few months old or a year old for beef, doesn't matter. So it's always trying to be there at the forefront, telling the people the reality.
Yeah. So, so one of we're talking about the dairy industry here, and we know obviously one of the big things there was a load of stuff over Twitter and social media when the pandemic was hitting about the big dairy bailouts, because obviously there was so many fewer people who were not buying milk and dairy products, and there was huge bailouts. We know that obviously if the bailouts stop, the dairy industry will fail pretty much overnight, because the majority of them rely on the subsidies. So in terms of getting the balance from animal farmers, moving away from getting the subsidies, moving from animal farmers to plant-based farming, how important do you think that is, that we keep on pushing that?
I think it's really important. And to be honest, if we had more resources, then we would be focusing a lot more on that. But I know Viva has just started a campaign to work with farmers. I think it's very important. I mean, at the same time, I think the industry is going to find its own way. It's not really going to take activists with very few sort of resources to change things. The industry will start to change. But unfortunately, while you've got the government, as you said, bailing them out, it is difficult, but I think certainly it is an area that is important for activism, and I think it is important to actually engage with farmers as well. Hopefully a lot of these older farmers, they're not going to change, but the younger farmers hopefully will do, if it becomes very unsustainable to continue with dairy farming, which I believe that it's going to be the first of the industries to go, because it is literally the government bailing them out. But again, that takes it down to consumer awareness as well, like just really trying to advocate plant-based milks as well, because if the demand isn't there, that's it for them.
Yeah, I think, and there's a few really valid points you made there. I mean, there's so much choice now with plant-based milks. You just kind of, when you go into any supermarket, you kind of like wonder who actually is buying dairy milk cow's milk. And we know that, I mean, I keep on seeing some anecdotal, sort of comments on social media about the millennials, the younger ones who are ashamed to actually ask for cow's milk, which is I was
going to say that exactly, which is brilliant, is the fact that it's become a bit of a dirty, and I think that's why our job is so important as well, and your job as well, just to keep showing the reality for dairy, keep showing it, keep showing that it means the death of the calves, the death of the mother, the separation. That is going to change. It will change, but there's lots of things we should be doing about as activists. I think it's a case of just changing strategies and just dipping into different things to try and make the biggest impact.
So what's next for Animal Justice Project?
Well, we have a very exciting year ahead of us. We are on the cusp of launching a new investigation. Obviously, I can't give any details, but everybody keep their eye on our feeds, our social media feeds, for the next few weeks. So that's going to be the biggie. We're also looking at a couple of brand new campaigns this year, which are quite exciting. But again, I probably can't go into too much detail. We're going to be continuing, obviously, our dairy still kills, as always. We're always interested in finding out about calves and finding out about the trade. So if anyone has any information as well, please do get in contact with us about anything dairy, beef, calves, all under our expired campaign. We've got Ayrton, our campaigns manager, who's going to be continuing our work for ducks, grassing and foods, keeping the pressure on them. We've got a new website coming, which is very exciting, because our website is 2014, and when you try and load a page, it takes about a minute, so people are just leaving. So we've got a new website coming, a couple of new campaigns, an imminent new undercover investigation. I'm working on another investigation. Our investigations run continuously. So we have a team of people that are already on the next job as well. So yeah, just hoping to get bigger and better, really, and just do more and more for farmed animals, make more successes.
Yeah, I feel exhausted just listening to you there. But it's been a privilege and a pleasure talking to you today. So thank you very much for everything that you were doing, and everybody else at Animal Justice Project as well. We hope that we work with you again very soon. So I want to wish you all the best of luck. So I'm going to sign off now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah.
You're very welcome. So this is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights signing off now, and saying goodbye to Claire Palmer, the founder of Animal Justice Project. Bye for now.
Bye.